That's perfect.
Hey, listen!
Welcome to Season 1, Episode 21 of Digital Dissection, where we take a closer and possibly unnecessary look at our favorite properties. Today, three friends have come together to search Hyrule far and wide for the pieces of the Triforce, and to do some rather questionable things with cuckoos. Joining us is a special co-host and good friend, Chelsea. With our combined courage, power, and wisdom, we'll attempt to help make sense of a rather expansive Legend of Zelda timeline.
Before we try and pull the Master Sword from its pedestal to save the day, we are Joe, Mark, and Chelsea. Three friends who love talking pop culture and bringing our passion for our favorite properties to your ears. If you got here today by accident, though, try searching for us by typing in Digital Dissection, a nerd podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're not following those types of websites, you can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter by searching for @DigitalDissect1. Our social media sites share more pop culture news and current information, so feel free to join the conversation.
Let's talk Legend of Zelda. This is exciting. Because this is a franchise that's going on. I think its entry year was literally days after my birth, which is exciting. Yeah, which we don't reveal in the podcast or anywhere. So, but hey,
wait. The birth of the conception, because I think we've covered at least one of those.
One of the two. Probably conception, but that is neither here nor there. Let's go actually talk about someone new to the podcast. So everyone, please welcome Chelsea to the podcast. This is exciting.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, hopefully not the last time. This will, hoping not to like scare you off. Like, wait a second, I thought about podcasting. I invested in a mic, and it's turned out I'm glad I only wasted $60 on this profession. And it's time to move on.
Well, we'll see how shrill my voice sounds when the recording comes out, and then I'll make a decision.
I'm sure it'll sound fine. Like Joe and I were both concerned about that at first, but then one of the reviews that came up on Google or on Apple, actually, I think that the words they used was that our voices were like audible chocolate. Joe, if you can imagine that.
Yeah.
God, and then we're gonna throw in this random girl to just take all that audible chocolate and destroy it.
Yeah, that's, you know what, we need to shake up, because as our producer is actually indicating to me right now that the ratings definitely need to boost. So what's that? Producer's now giving me the finger. Apparently I was not supposed to reveal that information, but we're gonna now just charge forward and act like that never happened. So Chelsea and I actually know each other from college. We were roommates for a bit there. That was a fun time. Yeah,
it was. It was a lot of fun stuff happened. A lot of video games and binge drinking.
And actually, like, fun thing about our friendship and very, very time of this podcast is I think one of the first things we ever talked about when we met each other was playing The Legend of Zelda.
Probably. It is my number one franchise. I feel like I watched my mom play Legend of Zelda, and that is what awesome. Oh yeah, I was definitely the co-pilot. Sitting there with her little walkthrough guide in the early 90s, walking her through the regular Legend of Zelda.
That's fantastic.
Just call the navigator through Hyrule. Love it. But yeah, great. So actually, speaking of that, talking about like the original Zelda game, I actually kind of wanted to hear from all of us, like, where did we, because this is like, I think this game is at 19 titles long, is how many, like, if you look at Zelda games, not counting like HD remakes or re-releases or like collection like events, just 19 games. So where did we all actually start playing this game?
I was gonna say, Chelsea, if you I mean, you kind of walked us through a little bit of it, but I'd still love to hear the discovery stage for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did not start off playing this game. I will be very blunt and very clear about that. Mom had priority of the paddles. And that was not my role. So I started off watching the game, and it was with, Legend of Zelda. I mean, she would just sit down and over and over and over replay that game, replay that game, replay that game. So I saw a lot of that, and it was a lot of fun. And then, moved on to, she didn't really care so much for like the Adventures of Link. That kind of went into, I think no one really cared for that game.
No one did. The side-scrolling thing just did not work for Link at all.
Yes.
It was so odd. It was very odd. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if they were trying like a Castlevania approach or what they were, or Mario or something. I'm not sure what they were doing there, but it wasn't it.
Yeah, no, you weren't feeling it, and I think the Japan and America not feeling it as well, because that game I think underperformed when it came out.
Yeah, absolutely. But then it was, obviously she transitioned to Link to the Past on Super Nintendo, and again played through that 1,000 times. And I pretty much co-piloted all the way through those. Like, obviously now I've went back and myself played them many, many times as well, but I didn't get my hands really into and on a game and really start immersively playing until Ocarina of Time.
Yes.
Yeah, that was where, okay, Mom, you're not doing this well enough. Like, give me that.
Yes, you've had your run at it. Like, it's Chelsea time.
Yeah.
Hand those over.
Exactly.
Well, something we do on this show, we do tap into, a little bit of the history of these properties. And, one thing I wanted to actually point out, or I say a thing, but I mean a Japanese man by the name of Shigeru Miyamoto. Shigeru, this dude he was attached to almost every major 80s property you could think of. I mean, like, he was behind Donkey Kong, Pikmin series, F-Zero, obviously, Super Mario, but also Star Fox and the not mentioned Nintendogs.
Nintendogs.
And we're not here to talk about Nintendogs today.
No.
As much as we'd like to, and we're prepared to. We're not going to.
Oh, yeah, maybe that'll be the episode where we're forced to talk about something thing, is we just get Nintendogs.
which just says we're going to be forced to talk about something for I think it's 8 people now that listen to this podcast.
Booyah! Lucky number 8.
Yeah, we are running a Twitter contest once we hit 1,000 followers, which we're actually really, really close to. By the time you hear this, we'll probably already have announced the winner. But yeah, someone out there, we're not quite sure who yet, as of this recording, will be picking a random topic for us to discuss on a future episode. So stay tuned.
Yeah. So, before we get talking Nintendogs in that episode, which maybe it'll be like our version of Battletoads, that running gag, if you're familiar with the Pawn Stars. But yeah, before we get into Nintendogs, let's go back to Legend of Zelda. Speaking of like Miyamoto, fun story about the whole, like, how like when you first play the OG game, and one of the first things you're supposed to do is go and get the sword, because you start off swordless. I think you just get a shield to start things off with. And you have to actually go through a cave to get it. Originally, when the game was developed, you started with the sword, but test players complained so much about unclear like gameplay and unclear like motivation as to playing. He got so mad, he took the sword away. So the first thing you had to do was actually get it. So it was like a punishment to complaints about the game. And it's kind of funny how that trope just actually kind of stuck through multiple games. You actually have to wander for a while before you get the sword. And Miyamoto even said that you could actually beat a majority of the original game without even getting the sword. You can go through a good chunk. Like he said, like mostly you just need the sword for Ganon, because you can get around using the other, like the boomerang and the shield and other weapons to like beat the enemy. So you don't even need the sword. But yeah, he got so mad he took it away.
And Miyamoto loved to downplay the importance of the high score. So the idea of just using a shield to achieve everything in a game, that spirit is shining.
You can go the Captain America route. That's fine. It worked for Steve. Why not Link? But when you look at Link going through Land of Hyrule, when you look at Hyrule in this game, it's pretty run down. Like it's not pretty. Forests are there. They're not very lush. You got sand in a lot of places. Like the Gerudo Desert seems like it's almost like taken over. The Zoras, huge bag of dicks, by the way, in this game. Shooting fireballs and stuff at you, which, if you started with the Ocarina of Time, well, obviously Chelsea started playing there, but you've watched the older games. But like, if you didn't play the old games, or certain games in this franchise, you'd be like, well, why the Zoras dicks? This doesn't make any sense at all. Like, they're our friends. What's going on here? And that's because, like, as it turns out, even though that, The Legend of Zelda, the game that came out in 1986, was the first game, it's not where the story starts. And that's kind of what we want to talk about today, is that this is a pretty expansive and very confusing timeline when you start trying to play the games. So before we get into the actual timeline, fun and games things here that I've prepared. Let's see if you two can go through all 19 titles of the game in their release order. Obviously, starting with Legend of Zelda, and go forward from there. See if you can do it. Go.
Sorry, Chelsea. This is our first opportunity as a team.
We can do
this. Well, we've already got Legend of Zelda and Adventure of Link. We've knocked those out. We already know those ones. So those are given. We only got to get 17 now.
17 more to go.
Well, you and I both know A Link to the Past. That one's kind of a giveaway too. So
yes,
down to 16.
So that's the first three, right? So Legend of Zelda, Adventures of Link, Link to the Past,
Awakening.
Yes,
I remember
DS.
People,
or not DS. Oh my God, the Game Boy.
Yeah. People hated Awakening, I thought, for some reason.
I actually never played Awakening on the original, DS. I did play the remake.
Yeah.
And enjoyed that very much. It's just kind of, it's a nostalgia thing, right?
Yeah. Because that's right. Because I remember Awakening was re-released like end of the 90s, so that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yep. So after Awakening,
it was Ocarina of Time, wasn't it?
Ocarina of Time. Yep. Ocarina of Time.
That is correct.
Because there's a gap until like late 90s. I remember.
And then Majora's Mask followed up right after Ocarina of Time.
Truth.
Yeah.
This is where it gets tricky, because I feel like kind of how they release things is you do your console games and then they throw you out like a handheld and then they give you more console games. But I'll
give you a hint with this one. Think Pokemon with this one. If there's a Legend of Zelda game that you can kind of think does the same like Pokemon method of multiple games released at the same time.
So this is where I will get frustrated, because Chelsea, if I remember correctly, the early 2000s was like a fire hose of Zelda games. Like it was absolutely ridiculous how many came out. And I don't want to say Wind Waker, because like that was in the middle of this. I don't think Wind Waker was the first one to come out.
I feel like there's another one, because console game next is Wind Waker, but I feel like there is another.
Wasn't there Four Swords? Was that one of them?
So yes, that was one. It could be Four Swords, because although he's letting
us struggle. Joe's letting us struggle. He's letting us ride the bike here.
He's like, but how is that anything like?
You're in the ballpark.
I don't understand your hint.
Of like, so think like like Pokemon came out with Red and Blue in the United States. The Legend of Zelda jumped on that bandwagon too, where they released more or less the same game.
It's Oracle, right? There's two Oracle games.
Yep, the two Oracle games.
Damn it. Oh my God, Game Boy Color. I can see the damn box.
Seasons and Ages.
Yeah, Seasons and Ages.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Yes.
And then I'll even be nice. I'll piece together. Four Swords comes after that, and then you're right that Wind Waker comes after A Link to the Past, which is a re-release with Four Swords. They were like kind of packed into one game.
Okay.
And then Wind Waker comes after that, and then they jump back. They're not even the game. No, they stay on the GameCube for the next one. So I'm going to keep going after Wind Waker now.
Oh man. See, now this is where I like absolutely have to check out because, well, I'll rattle these off. I only know of Twilight Princess, Phantom Hourglass. There was Spirit Tracks. Yep. There was Ocarina of Time when they actually like did it in 3D, I think.
Yeah, but we're not counting the remakes.
And that's way later too.
That's fine.
Like
Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword was after that.
Skyward Swords is like 2011.
Yeah.
Oh wait, did I skip over some? Oh, that's right. We like did like a time jump here, didn't we?
Of all the ones that you mentioned, like there are two games that happen before the earliest game of the set that you just mentioned.
Before Wind Waker?
Not before Wind Waker, after Wind Waker. So think between Wind Waker and between Wind Waker and Twilight Princess.
Okay, before Twilight Princess, but after Wind Waker. Okay.
There are two games between those two. We will see if you get. I'll give you one guess, and then we'll continue on with the show.
By the way, for those listening at home, that's our Sully alert. Sully loves to come in and bark every now and again.
And there is a storm currently in Stevens Point. He's not a fan of those.
But mostly he knows the answer. We just can't understand him.
Yes, he is trying to help. He's a helpful little guy.
You see, I'm going to struggle here because this was not an area. Like I said, this is not an area of Zelda that I played.
And this is actually where it's really mean because it's Four Swords Adventures is after Wind Waker.
Oh,
it's a second Four Swords game.
That's bold. Okay, fine.
And
I didn't ever play that game.
Neither did I.
It was on the GameCube.
Yeah, on the GameCube.
I can't imagine it did well.
I don't think it did. And then after that was Minish Cap.
Oh, Minish Cap.
Minish Cap. Yep.
Good old Game Boy Advance. I knew I was going to forget one of these.
So then there's Twilight Princess, Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, Skyward Sword. You mentioned all of those. Then you had A Link Between Worlds, which I remember playing that one for the 3DS. Game. Great game as a sequel to Link to the Past.
Fun. Yeah. Super, super fun.
Yep. And this is where Nintendo like really love their remakes because that's all they do now. But like they remade Ocarina of Time, they remade Wind Waker. I remember Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess both got remakes. And that basically brings us up to Breath of the Wild, doesn't it?
Nah, Triforce Heroes happens right before Breath of the Wild.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then actually, I should be mad. I should be mad that I said 19 titles. There's 20 because I forgot Age of Calamity in that count.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't like to count those.
Well, I mean, Triforce Heroes came with a free scarf, so it gave you swag.
A scarf, because Link wears lots of scarves.
He does in the one game.
but you know what? Joe is a Nathan Drake fan, so wearing a scarf for him is not exactly
This is true. This is true.
Yes. So now that we've covered like the expanse of like the number of games that are here, let's go through like when they actually take place. So Chelsea, I'm pretty sure you know, where does the story actually begin for The Legend of Zelda?
The story begins with Skyward Sword.
Boom. Absolutely right.
Another title that was not my favorite.
No, you are not a fan of Skyward Sword. So why didn't you like Skyward Sword?
Well, so to be completely honest, I think that a big thing that turned it off for me was the Wii and the Wiimote and those controls. They just it really killed it for me. Which is funny because a lot of people played Twilight Princess on the Wii.
Myself included.
But I did not. I was one of those that as soon as Twilight Princess was announced, I had it on pre-order for my sweet-ass GameCube. And so that's how I played it, and I loved it. It's one of my favorite Zelda games. The combat is amazing. It's super fluid. It just, you feel awesome when you are killing things with your sword in Twilight Princess.
Absolutely do. And like, again, with Twilight Princess, so we'll get back to Skyward Sword in a second here, but like Twilight Princess, that game was designed for the GameCube, not the Wii.
Correct.
So the motion controls were like kind of like a second or an afterthought. So like they weren't, as much as they were annoying in Skyward Sword, they were even more annoying in Twilight Princess because they were kind of like a forced like part of it. Right. Just not fun.
And because it was such beautiful combat otherwise in in Twilight Princess. So I think coming off of Twilight Princess, for me, I played the crap out of that game. I was so excited for Skyward Sword, and I just could not get into the motion controls. I felt like an idiot. It was not enjoyable. I don't want to exercise right now.
No. Want to play video games? You want to sit down and veg out for a bit, please.
Exactly.
Don't make me move. Come on.
Leave it to the Mario Tennis, just otherwise.
Yeah, we have the whole Wii Sports Resort to do that with. Don't force Zelda into this.
Didn't Skyward Sword kind of set in motion, well, or rather reinforce this like Zelda belief that we need to just seal away all of our bad guys, right? Like
it did. Well, I mean that's kind of like how we always deal with Ganon, is we seal him away, because I think the game has a problem with actually killing the antagonist. Like we just don't do that. We seal him away for safekeeping.
Is he fucking Batman or something? Jesus, come on.
Yeah, we don't kill people. They just go to sleep. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, and I might upset, I guess, diehard fans if they're here and listening to this, and I'm about to say some stuff right now that gets me death threats. But I think part of the lore is that, the three heroes, Link, Zelda, Ganon, they kind of perpetually always exist.
They do. Yeah. And Skyward Sword's what starts that, because you got the descendants of Hylia, who is the goddess who's basically taking care of the planet after the Triforce goddesses make everything. And she basically chooses to become mortal so she can wield the Triforce, which is left behind by the goddesses. And her human form is the first Zelda, which is pretty great. And then the Link in that game is the person, like, he's the first Link to not only wield the Master Sword, but he forges the Master Sword. So that kind of like cements his lineage as the hero. And then you have Demise, who's going to work as basically the first form of Ganon, or Ganondorf. And just before you beat the game, spoiler alert, you seal Demise away. And he basically, as he's being sealed away, basically sets out this curse saying that, like, as long as your lines are there, I will always keep, like, basically rebirthing or, like, reincarnating to try and, like, basically torment the line of the goddess and the hero for all eternity. So that's kind of like the in-game way of explaining why you keep having these same three characters come back, even though they're not actually the same three characters in each game.
Yes.
So yeah, Skyward Sword starts that. And then when you continue through the line of Zelda games, the next one that happens is actually the Minish Cap, which I'm not going to go into too much because I didn't play Minish Cap.
I didn't play it either.
Honestly, it sounds like a slur to me, and I don't want to say it too many times.
We're not going to go there. We all know is the Cap is alive. It may or may not sound like Danny DeVito.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go that way because, like, most Zelda games, like, you don't have voice actors or actresses. Actually, like, Breath of the Wild was the first time Zelda had a voice actress ever. So we'll just assume that the Minish Cap is Danny DeVito, and I'm fine with that.
I'm behind that. Yeah, that makes sense.
And that game and the next game, which is Four Swords, are like the first games where you don't have that Ganon counterpiece. You have Vati as the big bad in the game.
Vati's a demon, right?
Yeah, Vati's a demon. Big eyeball, can take many shapes and forms. Yep. And then that's where we come to the game that is going to really muddy the timeline because of what it does, and that is the Ocarina of Time. And just before we get going into the absolute beautiful game that is that, let's go into how much of, like, really of a legacy game this actually is. Famitsu magazine, which is still a very popular gaming magazine in Japan, this was the first game it ever gave a perfect score to. And I think it's only given that to like 26 games, The other game, some of the other games that hold that are Wind Waker, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild. All hold a perfect score from that magazine. This was also G4, that sweet, sweet defunct gaming network that we all loved in college. Said this was the best game of all time.
Really?
Yeah. And it, to this date, holds the highest Metacritic gaming score of a 99 out of 100.
Wow. They must not have played the Puss in Boots game. for devotees of this show, we've mentioned this game quite a few times.
Oh my gosh.
Not to detract too much from
No,
this.
but one day when we get the technology to do playthroughs, Mark is replaying that game so we can all go through that again.
No. I would rather eat a roll of quarters and watch him come out the other end before I play that game again.
Come on, we can live stream.
It'll be great. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. But all right, before Puss in Boots, let's talk about, obviously, the accolades are there. This is one of the best games ever made. And that is, I would say at this point, not really even debatable with how much this is universally loved. But what did we love about this game? We look at the game and where it happens. Hyrule had just kind of finished a civil war among the kingdoms of the Gerudo, the Hylians, the Goron, and the Zora. And we now have this peace, and Hyrule is kind of starting to come back together. And so we have this beautiful first time 3D landscape for The Legend of Zelda. And I remember playing this first time. I borrowed it from a friend, and he didn't get the game back for I think a solid year. So I just kept replaying it over and over again. But what did we love about this game?
I mean everything. I remember the very first time, we bought it and brought it home from GameStop and plugged it in, put it on, and just being blown away by how beautiful it was, how immersive it felt, how cool it was to see, Link in quote unquote 3D.
Oh yes, those beautiful triangle-shaped hands of his.
Yes, all of the pixels. I just running around, and I remember just us, my mom and I, again, because we were just over the TV, just in awe. Things floating through the air, just the lighting was awesome.
Oh yes.
Right away, love.
One thing I want to say about this game, just from a development standpoint, when you think about how brilliant and how beautiful this game was, Nintendo was actually developing Super Mario 64 and Mario Kart 64 at the same time as this.
Yeah. And so this was supposed to be the flagship for the 64 DD. Do you remember that thing?
No.
Yes. There was this movement from the 16 to 32 to 64-bit thing where companies kept trying to say, how can we beef up this system? Well, let's just put another big fucking thing on top of it and make it look twice as big as it was before, but have more processing power. And so that's basically like what the Sega did the same thing. The 64 DD was the same type of idea. And so just ridiculous.
Yep. But obviously, the whole thing, the 64 DD was a mess. As we're pointing out, one of us doesn't even remember it existed.
Nope.
So clearly, that didn't pan out. And because the development was such an issue, they just you know what, let's just put it on the 64 and get this game out there. And I'm so very happy it did. Because, again, this was just an amazing story. You had so much you could do in this game between pieces of hearts, trying to free the Scatella family, getting all the jars, going on the Bigoron sword quests. Oh my god, it was all so much fun.
How about Epona? That rocked my damn world. It just excuse me, chicka, what? Yeah. I want to ride the horse.
And you can just summon it with your ocarina, and she just shows up anywhere except Castletown. But outside of Castletown, she goes anywhere you want her to.
Yep, it's great, and it made the game feel even that more of something. For me, I don't think that there was anything out there even close at the time. It was just huge.
Yep, it was, and it is so huge that it would actually begin to splinter the timeline of The Legend of Zelda. Because when we get to the final battle where Link is fighting Ganon, which of all of us playing this game, how many of us actually beat Ganon the first time through?
Oh,
no.
No. Congratulations. That's how the first timeline's created. Link dies fighting Ganon. Crap.
Yeah.
That's what happens there. So he actually gains all 3 pieces of the Triforce, is basically, I don't want to say nearly all powerful, but pretty darn near all powerful. And then Zelda and the 7 sages just kind of seal him away in the Sacred Realm. And because he is so powerful, he more or less infects the Sacred Realm to the point where it becomes called the Dark Realm. It is its own crazy place now where Ganon is just king over everything. And Hyrule moves forward. There's a war there to try after the people like, oh wait, there's this whole thing called the Triforce to make us powerful. We want that. And then they fight over it. They want to get access to the Sacred Realm. And then this is where it leads us to A Link to the Past. Because of now like this mistrust in the royal family, and kind of like we actually start to see the royal bloodline decline to the point where Hylians, our pointy-eared friends, aren't really even around that much anymore. It's down to the royal family and the Knights of Hyrule, which is where Link is living with his uncle to start off A Link to the Past.
Yeah, it sounds like a shitty 80s movie, right? Hyrule Knights, doesn't it?
Yep. Hyrule Knights and Gerudo Days, am I right? Yeah.
This is interesting though, because this was like the 7-year time jump, and then you've got these like different branches that I mean it was just cool in exception seeing how these branches work. Yeah, I thought that was a really, really cool way to tie this whole universe together. That they had basically spent the better part of 12 years making so far.
Yeah, and A Link to the Past was, I think, honestly until it was literally one game away, it was considered like the best Zelda game until Ocarina of Time came out. So we get pink-haired Link in Link to the Past, which I think, wasn't that like a development mistake? They accidentally made his hair pink. Like, you know what? Let's roll with it. We're not going to go back and fix that.
You know what? It's design choice. I would say, that's fine because, I mean, he went through some shit.
Yeah, it's the late 80s, early 90s. It's rad. He's been through some things. Let's just go with it. Pink hair.
We were all wearing pink back then.
All wearing pink. Yeah.
I think I had a pair of pink jorts that I wore back then. So you know what? Let's do it. I'm fine with it.
Yeah. I had like the pink like slap bracelets. They were cool. You were like 9 of them up one arm. Come on. We're all there. Hold on.
You said had. I'm sure you still have that in a drawer that you just closed slowly, hoping we didn't notice.
It is in a time capsule, and it will be discovered by our ancestors. There are directions and notes so that it cannot be obscured, and they will know exactly what the past was like.
Well, speaking of the past, A Link to the Past.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was interesting here was that, like, when I started playing Zelda, A Link to the Past was the one that I had the most memories formed for, right? Because you and I were just a couple of pupas back in '86. It's not like we really, really understood what was going on.
No.
So like A Link to the Past was the one that I spent just, I had more dash time with. And so like the 7 sages who helped Link in, Ocarina, who, sealed away Ganondorf and all that. And the whole Dark World thing. And now we've got like this more beastly form of just Ganon, who's basically trying to take over the Dark World and Hyrule.
Yeah, I mean, he has the Dark World, that's his to own, but then the goal in that game is he's actually there's like a priest that's trying to bring him into the to the light world, so that bring Ganon back. Which, by the way, recurring theme. So like basically when you like, I'm just trying to think of like like henchmen and bad guys in Legend of Zelda. They have like these nice like focus sessions over what we can do to make Hyrule ours. And then they have all these, they have like options, and they just throw rocks at them. And whatever happens is they have like, basically like, they just had like for the options, people just wrote like on a paper, folded in half and put it out there, and they just picked one. And most people are just like, man, just bring Ganon back. And they just pick like, oh, bring Ganon back. The system still works. Let's bring him back. And that's what we try doing in this game. And then you get a Link Between Worlds. Takes place after this one. And then after that, I believe you get the Oracle of Ages and Seasons. And then Link's Awakening, which just recently got a remake on the Switch. Super cute and fun to play, by the way. I did enjoy that one.
I liked it a lot too. It was, yeah. Like I said before, I didn't play the original, but it was a big old nostalgia bomb. The puzzles in it are really fun and interesting, which is not something you normally get in a Zelda game. It's not normally a puzzle-solving game. So that's why it's fun. It's unique. It brings in, those fun Mario characters.
Which, if you, I don't know, spoiler alert for those moving forward, the reason why you see Mario characters is because the whole game is a dream. Link is literally stuck inside of the windfish, which is, think of like a giant humpback whale with 2 comically tiny wings on its back. And it's dreaming the whole time. And its nightmares are trying to infect it, which is why there are bad things in the world. But because it's dreaming, it sees like things from the Mario games, and you get to interact with them. Because I think like the girl from that game, I forget her name, but like her dad is Mario, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he looks like him anyway. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, fun stuff. So, and here, after that is where we reach the era of decline, and that is where finally The Legend of Zelda, followed by Link to Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link, then takes place. And so that's the timeline. That's the timeline known as the decline of Hyrule and the heroes defeated. And then we now have 2 scenarios where when we go back to the Ocarina of Time, when we learned from our mistakes and Ganon killing us, we have then figured out all of his tricks, and we now defeat Ganon. And so, who remembers what happens when you actually beat Ganon in the story?
I honestly, this one, once again, Joe, we've used this analogy before where you've got a master's degree in certain things and I've got 2-year degrees that I just did not finish. Zelda's definitely one of those things that I have not brushed up on enough. So yeah, couldn't even tell you.
Chelsea, do you remember?
So you actually, in this game, Zelda helps you defeat Ganon for the first time with the light arrow, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So it's the light then that is able to weaken him enough so that you can, quote unquote, defeat him, and it forces him back into the Dark Realm, I think.
Indeed. Yep. He gets sealed away.
Yeah. Yes. There's a wonderful, I'm seeing the cutscene now. There's a wonderful like screaming up into the air with hands as he's just like, zoom.
I would have got away with it too. It wasn't for your darn kids and your horse.
And your meddling horse.
And I'm pretty sure this cutscene shows us Endor with the Ewoks dancing, right? Like, is that what happens during this?
Yep, the Ewoks are dancing with the Gorons. The Zoras are shooting off fireworks. It's a great time.
Yep.
But yeah, so after you defeat Ganon, he gets sealed in the Sacred Realm, and now you get Zelda and Link. And Zelda's sitting there feeling bad that Link's life was basically wasted because of what she thinks are her choices. So she then sends Link back in time. And this is where begins the second of the timelines, the hero triumphant and the child timeline. Because from here, we have Zelda and Link both as children. And there's a crucial part in the game where Link first meets Zelda, except now Link has knowledge of the future. So he tells Zelda, oh, hey, by the way, this stuff's going to go down. And she's like, oh my God, take the Ocarina now and just get the heck out of here. So that's what Link does. He gets the heck out of there. He doesn't pull the Master Sword from the pedestal. Ganon does not get access to the Sacred Realm and the Triforce of Power. And therefore, the events of Ocarina of Time from there forward don't happen. So instead, Link is in search of Navi, his hey listen buddy. Also, by the way, I think voted the most annoying video game character of all time was Navi.
Ouch.
Yep. Sick burn, Navi. Yeah.
I don't know.
There
Come
are worse
on,
out
guys.
there.
There are way worse out there.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if one of your good friends had that as their ringtone, for their cell phone for
hey, listen.
For a while.
Yeah. So, Mark, that definitely sounds like it's a coming from a personal place.
No, it's coming from a place of love.
Okay.
A place of love, of course. Yeah. But we're sent to Termina, aren't we?
Yeah, we are sent to Termina, so we get Majora's Mask after this, which also very fun follow-up to Ocarina of Time. I loved Majora's Mask.
I do too.
So Termina is this weird place. It's not Hyrule. It's a parallel world, and exactly how it gets there is up for debate. Some people say that since the Triforce goddesses made all of creation, they made Termina. But there are also others that think that when Majora's Mask actually planted on the Skull Kid, who this is now the main antagonist for the storyline, is that Majora is so powerful, he basically creates this pocket realm that is Termina. And he's like, Majora's taking from things he knows about Hyrule and making them in this world, which is why you get a lot of very similar looking characters who have no knowledge of Hyrule and their backstory. So this was a fun one for me. I absolutely love playing this thing, collecting all the masks, getting the Fierce Steed at the very end. Did you both play this one?
Yes.
So this one I didn't play as much of, but I had friends who played the hell out of it. So I watched more of this than I played.
Yep. So great one. I'm not going to dive too much into this one, mostly because the next game in this timeline, I know Chelsea's going to gush about, and that's Twilight Princess. So Chelsea, tell us about Twilight Princess. Like, what do you remember about what's going on with Hyrule at this time? Where do we find ourselves in the history after everything that's happened so far with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask?
Yeah, absolutely. So honestly, I think for me, Twilight Princess was so great because I was itching again for something else that really goes kind of back to the feel of Ocarina of Time, which I feel like we didn't really. I loved Majora's Mask, but you didn't. It was a different feel, totally different feel.
Very much so.
I think it was great because they somehow hit you with nostalgia again, right away, even though it wasn't that long ago that we were playing Ocarina of Time, but somehow they figured out how to tap into to nostalgia.
They did. They gave some sweet PG-13 lighting as well.
Yes. So while that was great, absolutely loved it, I was really itching again for Twilight Princess because it was so so reminiscent of the Ocarina of Time with me, but just with some more adult. Look at how Link looks. Link looks. Who is this person? He looks awesome.
I know. And do you remember what happens? If you're actually defeat an enemy encounter without losing any health?
You got your cool sword animations.
Yeah, he does this cool shows off the way he puts away his sword. Oh my god, this guy is such a badass, the hero of Twilight. Holy crap.
And you felt amazing doing it too.
You did.
Yeah, I totally just murdered that thing over there.
That's a well-adjusted young man right there.
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, kind of going back to me earlier talking about how amazing the combat and things like that were, I feel like this game was the first time that they introduced different combo moves.
Yeah, I think it was.
And I loved going around finding all the areas where you could learn your new, sweet ass sword moves, and then just being able to fluidly do them in combat was amazing and so much fun. Loved every minute of it.
Yeah. Completely agree. And then the added Twilight Realm stuff where you become a wolf. Very fun mechanic in this game.
Yep. Absolutely. It was great. And again, I feel like this one too kind of breathed more life into the actual areas of Hyrule as well, right? Before you never really paid much attention to the Farin region or even knowing different things like that, but it really made those specific areas feel a lot more meaningful, a lot more expansive. Just another really amazingly immersive game.
Yeah, I completely agree. Building off what you were saying, Hyrule and how the kingdom of Hyrule and the land of Hyrule and how expansive those two things are. I mean, they vary among the games. And I feel like Twilight Princess was one of the first games. They did a really good job expanding on the lore of the individual areas really well.
Yes.
So I completely get what you're saying there. And speaking of that lore, we've got some stuff going down during this timeline where Ganondorf, since he never actually got the Triforce of Power and never like got the Sacred Realm, that didn't mean he gave up, because he was still like salty over like the Hylian Civil War and still like trying like, oh, I know I swear allegiance to you like Hylian King, but deuces, I don't like you. And gets tried for his crimes therefore afterwards. And I think the game starts off with him being executed.
Yeah.
And then the execution doesn't take. It doesn't. It turns out it didn't work well. We stuffed like 5 swords in the dude, and he's still kicking. So,
well, technically, he's given the Triforce of Power. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he gets it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it allows him to survive it. But yeah.
Yep. So he survives, and he gets pushed into the Twilight Realm, and that's what kind of brings the whole Twilight Realm storyline into where we are now. One of my fun things that both makes me love this game and very like remorseful about the game is the hero shade.
Oh yeah.
Because it's revealed that the hero shade is the hero of time. So he's a Link from the Ocarina of Time, who grew up that's also the thing, because when you look at his timeline, then this Link remembers fighting and defeating Ganon. Yeah. He remembers going through Termina and saving Termina, an alternate world which no one else knows about, and no one else even knows about what he did fight Ganon. So no one knows he's a hero, and he's like stuck doing all this heroic stuff. Not that he needs to be worshipped or anything, but like no one realizes he did it. Yeah. So he's then haunted by that fact that he's done all these great deeds and gets no recognition for it. So the way he comes to term with this is he basically says he's going to train his descendants to also be heroes. So this is where I also find out that the hero of Twilight is a direct descendant of the hero of time, which is pretty cool. As far as who made that descendant with, that's another podcast. But yeah, so it's kind of fun. And then Twilight Princess we could gush about, but there's still a whole other timeline to go through yet. The most recent
the adult branch. We gotta
get the adult branch. We gotta get the adults there.
Yeah. Little kiddie branch, and now we're out of the shallow end of the pool, and now we gotta get into the larger one. Yeah.
Yep. And the last part of this timeline was Four Swords Adventures for the GameCube. So that's the last bit of the child timeline that we see. And then we go to the third and last timeline, like we were saying, the adult timeline. And my amoeba brain couldn't figure out why it was called the adult timeline for way too long. Because it's like, well, wait a second. Link still gets sent, like they still seal Ganon. That's still the same. He gets sealed away.
He goes back to his childhood too, doesn't he?
Link still goes back to his childhood and grows up. So I'm like, well, why is it the adult timeline? Well, because dingus, Zelda is still the adult.
Yes.
And it continues from her point of view. Look, the Legend of Zelda. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it took you 35 years to put that one together.
That's great.
Oh yeah. So here we go. We're continuing from Zelda's timeline. So her bloodline, the bloodline of Hylia is still going on, but the hero is no longer around. The hero descendancy is done because Link gets sent back to the past. He's no longer in that timeline. There's no way of continuing it. So eventually, as always, someone gets the bright idea to resurrect Ganon, because inevitably that's what happens. He makes it out of the Sacred Realm, and he's totally just dominating Hyrule. And King Daphne, I forget his like 4 middle names.
Oh my God. Yeah,
that go on after that.
He's like President Camacho. I can never remember all of his names.
I'm sure Mountain Dew's in there. But he decides, you know what? I'm going to leave this one up to the goddesses. They can decide what happens. And they decide, you know what? Let's nose arc this nonsense. Yeah. Jesus takes the wheel and floods Hyrule.
Yeah.
And we're up to, except for like the actual castle area, that gets like this weird suspended animation bit. But then we enter the Wind Waker, which... Well, when this game came out, looking at things here, with Link being alive now, and looking at Wind Waker things, when the game first came out, it actually got a little bit of heat because of the cell shading.
Yeah.
Breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Kills me. I hate that people hate that game, because it's a great game that deserves respect.
Completely. And like people like complain like, oh, it looks too simple, when like the actual like act of animating cell shading and coding it way harder than what they did with like the N64 titles. So
Right.
it was actually a visually difficult game to make. And then like you said, like, oh my God, fun game.
Yeah.
Holy crap, was this game great.
Yep.
So you're getting around the world now. You can't use Epona anymore because the world's flooded. So you have a boat that you get around in, which is pretty cool. And then you're going from spot to spot. Other updates that have happened, for some reason, which this still puzzles me, the Zora have evolved into the Rito, a race of bird-like humanoids, which I wonder why, because the world is mostly water, which is where they thrive.
It's literally your perfect environment.
Yep. But let's become birds instead. The Goron are still there.
Yeah. Humans are humans.
Mm-hmm. Still hanging around.
Yeah.
But yep. They evolve, and then the Kokiri evolve. They become our little goofy guys instead.
Yeah, little tree people.
Yeah. But oh my God, seriously, fun game with the and in this one, like the legend of the hero of time continues on. So even though he doesn't get a descendant anymore, it's still kind of a thing where when young men hit a certain age, they get the green tunic. They get to run around for a short period of time, pretending to be the hero of time to kind of remember what he did. Yeah, it's a coming of age thing. It's like a bat mitzvah for the Hylians at this point. Yeah. And it just so happens you get a boy who's called Link, and it's his coming of age time. His sister gets kidnapped by a massive eagle, and the story ensues from there. So what are some highlights or favorite moments we have from this game?
Exploration.
Yes.
I love how you start off the game and the map is just blank, and you've got to get out there and explore the map. And it was, again, I mean, I love just the big immersive game, and so it gave me that whole, somehow they tapped into another way to do that.
Yeah.
Like they just keep thinking of new ways to make it like, oh, even like it's exciting, it's fun, it's new, it's different. I loved it.
Yeah, and this is something where like Skyward Sword tried to repeat a little bit, but failed with exploring the skies because like, honestly, flying on the loft wings, boring.
Not fun.
AF. Not fun at all.
Nope.
As opposed to like, high adventures on the seven seas as Link with his pirate buddies. Holy crap, fun.
Finding treasure. I mean, that's great. So it hits on loot lust, which is important.
Yep. Yeah, you got loot lust. You got like legendary sea things like out there. They're legends of. There's massive octoworks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great times.
I just thought the sailing side of it was fun. I mean, like for me, it would be something that thirst would not be quenched again until Assassin's Creed 4. Like I just would not have another game that I could explore like this. And so that was like I think my favorite aspect of the game was just, let's set out. Let's go find out what's over there. Let's sail to it.
Yeah. You don't even have to be actually playing the story of this game to be playing the game and having a good time. You can just be out there plundering for booty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing the whole pirate thing for majority of the game. Yeah. Helping Tingle find land. He wants to figure out by. Oh my gosh, Tingle. There's just, again, like this was like I feel really bad, and I hate to sound like super old man. I feel bad for modern gamers who have grown up in the area of DLC as opposed to just, no, we have hours upon hours upon hours of new shit to explore in the game. All you have to do is look for it.
Yeah.
And holy crap, was it amazing. You paid $60 and you had just days to months of just fun exploring and looking for things in this game.
Hell, years. I can go back and play it right now and it'll be awesome.
Well, and not to mention, like, this was something I appreciated even then, was just the fact that like the sound team for this game was massive compared to others. And so like even though the soundtrack would be it really just based on environment, like I still loved it. It helped immerse me in it. And so I think for me, like music just brings out my most emotional threads.
Yes.
like nowadays, music can make me cry, even if it's like an old like like MIDI technology or something. Like it would still make me cry these days. So,
well, when the Ballad of the Winds comes on, I shed a tear.
It's a quiet tear though. It's like fighting.
It's on the inside. It's a manly
solitary tear.
But yeah, no, the music in this game, like again, like honestly, since the Ocarina of Time, music has been a solid part of the Zelda franchise. But this game really, really played on that. Like, oh my god, it did it so well with you conducting the winds, finding the sages who also like played music when they basically reawakened from these older forms into who they are in the modern day. So it just played so much off the musical aspect. And going further in this timeline, hate to cut Wind Waker short, but you get Phantom Hourglass, which is, again, this is the same Link and Zelda. So very rarely does it actually happen where you play the same Link for like continuous games. It basically happens with Ocarina of Time. It happened Ocarina of Time Majora's Mask. It happens with Link to the Past and Link Between Worlds, OG Legend of Zelda, and The Adventure of Link. And then again here, where you've got Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass still hanging out. And then sometime after Phantom Hourglass, again, I never played that one. Chelsea, you played that one, didn't you?
I did. Yep. I played Phantom Hourglass. I enjoyed it. It was fun. You know, it's one of those DS games, not overly difficult, just strap in. It's a good time.
Yeah. And I think the next one in the series, Spirit Tracks, where between Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, a new continent raises, and that's where the train aspect is actually be able to be utilized. That one, admittedly, I couldn't get into Spirit Tracks very well. Like I started it and I'm like, this is cute, it's fun, but for some reason it's just not working for me right now.
I gave it the old college try as well, and I can't remember if I beat it or not. I can't remember if I finished. I wasn't feeling the train.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't like Link. Link has no business in the modern world.
No, he doesn't need locomotion like that nonsense.
Pre-industrial era,
completely.
Please.
Absolutely.
No steampunk Link.
I'm gonna bring up. I'm gonna wait for it. I'll come back to this part of the conversation with Link in the modern era because this is something we experienced together, Chelsea. But we're gonna now go to the more modern title that is Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
And this game takes place tens of thousands of years after the most recent timeline games from all the other ones. And it's so far away that they actually refer to the old, like, basically Times of Hyrule as the era of myth. They're that far away. And so when we look at this game, I remember struggling initially. And then there was lots of anger, frustration, because every damn weapon breaks seemingly way too fast. I'm like, what the hell? And you get out of like the cave at first, and like your only weapon's a stick. And I remember like the first like enemy that I really encountered that it was complete by accident was like a freaking golem that rose out of the ground. I'm like, what the hell is this thing made of rock? I have a stick.
There's one right in the beginning area.
Yep. Like, why is this here? Who does this? No one does this. The Legend of Zelda did this. But I mean, I grew out of that pretty quick. Like, there was a good, like, I would say maybe a week where I'm like, fuck, I'm beating this just for the sake of beating it. And then after that first week, I'm like, all right, never mind. This game is brilliant. And I love this thing.
Yes.
So great game. So it's like, Chelsea, like, what's something like, Mark, because you didn't play Breath of the Wild. You haven't gotten there.
I did not, but I watched you live streamed it for me, and I watched you literally break almost every weapon you even looked at.
That'll happen.
Yeah, I was running pretty lean there on weaponry for a bit.
It's hard because I really enjoy, the addition of a fun little weapon system. I think it's neat just being able to kind of decide how you want to play. So I respect that. With that being said, it was pretty annoying, and I am just a sucker for the Master Sword.
Oh, yes.
So that it wore on me. It got old.
Oh yeah, it got old fast. But thankfully, like in this game, like you can go for the Master Sword virtually whenever you're ready. Well, not when you're ready. You do have to have at least, I think, 9 full hearts because the first trial of the Master Sword is to remove from the pedestal, and it drains health as you hold on to it. And if you don't have 9 full hearts, you die just trying to pull the thing out. It's rough times getting the Master Sword in this game. But once you have it, it is great. Like they keep that break mechanic in it, except in this game, it loses power and has to recharge, so you can't use it for 10 minutes, and then it comes back.
Yes, which is the longest 10 minutes of your damn life.
Especially if you're like remotely near the castle and the guardians are effing everywhere.
Yeah, you go by the castle, you're gonna have a bad time.
Huge bad time. Worst time ever had by a human being.
Yeah.
By the castle without the Master Sword.
So obviously when the Switch came out, you know, they kind of saved Breath of the Wild for the launch of that. That was, I feel like, their big buy a Switch so you can play Breath of the Wild. You know what I mean? And I held off for a long time. I was kind of, you know, just getting annoyed with new consoles all the time, getting annoyed with DLC and how they kind of shove stuff like that down your throat now. So I was not going to do it.
I recall that protest.
Yep. And that lasted all of not long.
No. I remember you made signs, got ready to pick it, but then threw the signs away.
And pulled out my wallet.
like a big person, like an adult.
Yep. I'm an adult and I'm buying a Switch.
Darn right. And holy crap, great decision. Yeah. So speaking of DLC, you had 2 DLC things for this. You had the Ballad of the Champions, and then you had the Trials of the Master Sword. And I'm going to go into, I think it is the Trials of the Masters. No, it's the Ballad of the Champions. Because I remember I completed that DLC at your house.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you get when you complete that?
Yes. Yeah. The world's sweetest form of transportation known to Hylians. And that is that badass motorbike. I don't remember the name of it.
the Master Cycle Zero. I just remember like we were watching it come up because like it was like a hell of a final battle. We're like, what are we gonna get for this? What are we gonna get? And just this motorcycle rides out of nowhere. We're like, no fucking way.
It is loud and it is. I mean, it is amazing.
It is incredible. And it completely defeats the purpose of like ever having a horse again. Yeah, you don't need them anymore. Yeah. So after like our struggle of like buying like the freaking definitely the counterfeit like amiibo things off of eBay so we could get Epona.
Oh my god, I remember this.
Yep. So
I was mad. This is where I have qualms. Okay, Nintendo, are you listening? I'm mad. Quit. You don't ever make a game again and don't give me that horse. I swear to God. I wanted to riot. I was so mad. What do you mean you can't get Epona? What do you mean? I can get a horse that looks like Epona, tame it, name it Pona, because I need something.
Because that's exactly what you did.
That is what I did.
Oh my gosh. And that's even like, when we look at like DLC and complaining about, this is the worst form of it. Because, I mean, there's DLC like you pay like $10 and you get like another like, I don't know, 4 days worth of content. Okay, whatever. You could have put that in the game. That's fine. But now you're going to pay $15 for a friggin' tiny statue to get things for your game on top of any DLC.
Yeah. And this is where it becomes like kind of, it's sad. It's such a money grab for an organization that doesn't need to be making a money grab. The whole series, you know, from day one and even right away, they have given us all of these titles, all of these games, all this nostalgia that we like need and we love, and that's why we keep coming back for more. And then for them to be ransom oh my gosh, I can't speak. Ransoming our nostalgia. Give that to me. Don't make me pay $15 more to have a horse that looks different from all my other horses.
And then I need to pay another $15 so I can have Link's tunic from the Ocarina of Time. What the hell?
I mean, or Tingle's outfit, you know, whatever tickles your fancy.
We all need Tingle's outfit. You have no idea. And because it's one thing to beat a Lionel, and it's a second thing to embarrass it dressed as Tingle.
I was gonna say I would rather just see Tingle's outfit versus him being in it, so that's fine with me.
Ho ho ho!
All right, so now comes the all-important part, and really the final part of our journey here in the timeline, because again, this takes place tens of thousands of years, but what timeline does it take place after? And this is where things get really muddy, because there is evidence of all three timelines in this game scattered through it. So if we go off of like let's say the hero fails timeline, one of the biggest glaring pieces of evidence that this is from that point in time is do you remember the Leviathan skeletons all around Hyrule?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Gerudo Leviathan, all the Leviathans look like basically like baleen whales, just massive skeletons that are over there. There are three of them. You have one in Eldin, one in Gerudo, and one in Hebra. And the one in Gerudo has flippers and then has some comically small appendages on its back that are reminiscent of the windfish from Link's Awakening. So here you have evidence of there. And fun other note, like the Elden Leviathan is definitely Levias from Skyward Sword. Like it is there's no confusing what that thing looks like if you've seen it before. It's big, huge, like bony dome. Is very evident on the Elden one. And there's a whole other like crazy thing of like central timeline stuff, like the Forgotten Temple is basically Skyloft, and they just built around it, which is pretty cool, because you can actually see like there are scattered throughout the land, there are like pillar ruins, but one thing that is of all like the actual like large structures that are still kind of around, this is the only structure that has loft wings depicted on it. You don't see them anywhere else, which is a call out to Skyward Sword. And when you look at basically when you go the furthest back you can in the Forgotten Temple, you hit a room that looks like it was excavated, because it looks like basically a hole was blown out of the wall. And you see the largest statue of the goddess Hylia in the game is there, which is pretty close, if not the statue that was in Skyloft, which was the massive Hylia statue. And if that's not enough to say, well, this is just coincidence, if you look at there are a series of, I believe, 8 pillars in that same room, that are reminiscent of the sealed temple, which is where the Master Sword first is. When it's originally the goddess sword from Skyward Sword, is that those are there. And if you think, well, those are just 8 pillars, man, whatever.
No, it matches the pieces.
Yeah, those are just pieces, man. But what's even crazier is if in Skyward Sword, you remember, you had to heal one of the dragons by going back in time and planting the Tree of Life so it could get this fruit to heal, I think, the Liernu province dragon.
Yes.
That tree, where you plant it just left of the pillars, is growing out of the effing wall in the Forgotten Temple to the left of those 8 pillars. So there's this massive tree growing out of it. I'm sorry, I hate to say the moon landing didn't happen, but in this case, I don't think the moon landing happened, guys. This is what's going on here. Okay, but anyway, back to other timeline stuff. So evidence of the adult timeline. So this is where the Wind Waker stuff that happens. Lurulian Village has the exact same layout as Outset Island, where you start in Wind Waker. It's this is something where it's it is too specific to be an Easter egg. It is. Buildings and landforms are exactly where they are in Outset Island as they are in Lurulian Village. And on top of that, you can get the Hero of the Winds garb, which that can be fan service because it's DLC. And really, there's not a lot of other things saying hey, this is worn by the Hero of the Winds, and that's all it says about it. But also, you have Rito in this game, and they don't exist anywhere else except for that adult timeline.
Yeah, that's true.
Another fun thing, Cod, do you remember Mekar Island?
Yes.
In this game, seemingly pretty pointless, right? Yeah, because it's basically an island with one tree on it. It's named after Mekar, the tiny little wind sage from from Wind Waker, which is pretty great. I think they flip some letters around, but they do that in multiple games. Like it's clearly like it's named after a character. They flop a couple letters, et cetera, et cetera. So you're thinking, okay, well, this is a direct reference to Wind Waker 2, which also places it in the adult timeline. However, when you look at the layout of the one massive tree and then the 4 dead trees that are smaller and growing around it, that's the same layout of the first dungeon in the original Legend of Zelda game.
Oh my god!
And you know what that game that dungeon's filled with? Stafflows. And guess what the fuck comes out of Mekar Island at night?
Mm-hmm.
A shit ton of high-powered Stafflows that are nowhere else in the game.
So this is me not having played, this entry in the series, but is this just a point where like we've gone through the cycle so many times, with these different timelines? Like, if we fucked up so much that things are converging now, like
that's what we're trying to figure out too, because like you've got those 2 timelines there, and there's stuff in the child timeline too. I mean, there's a lot of DLC stuff. You get Misko's journal. Misko is like one of like the 2, like I think they're archaeologists or thieves. I think they're thieves. They're hanging around there, and he's got journals of stuff. I think, are they thieves?
Same thing, right?
Same thing, yeah. I mean, archaeologists, they're just stealing old people's stuff. Like, they're dead, but it doesn't make their stuff not theirs. Come on.
Stealing stuff for science. It's different.
Exactly.
Where's the cutoff between archaeologist and grave robber, right? Like, where's that fine line?
I think it's a doctoral degree.
I think so. It's literally a piece of paper that makes the whole thing official. But yeah, it's like these guys, like Misko has journals over like stuff that he's finding, and he has very detailed journals on Midna and the Hero of Twilight, as though more so than like the DLC they give us for like the Wind Waker stuff that you find. So like they're very much talking about as though these were characters that are within this mythos. Also, the Great Bridge of Hylia is there, which was only a thing in Twilight Princess. And then even looking to like Zelda's description of the Master Sword in this game, it's whether skyward bound, adrift in time, references to Skyward Sword and the Ocarina of Time, or steeped in the glowing embers of Twilight, which is specifically Twilight Princess. So that's where, like, again, like it's muddied. It is so far into the future. We don't know if, like, at some point in time, the timelines reemerge and we get them together. And of course, this is all thinking like in-universe lore. From the Nintendo standpoint, they're like, we just want you to enjoy all the things. So we put it so far in the future, anything could happen.
Anything can happen.
Anything is possible. So it'll be interesting to see like what they do with this next.
So what I'm hearing is honestly Ocarina of Time fractured time into 3 possible timelines, but now we are thousands of years.
Yeah, tens of thousands, and
and somehow we've woven everything back together into one master timeline.
Yep, all roads just seem to lead to Breath of the Wild for some reason. And because Breath of the Wild does leave a lot of things like kind of like, unanswered, to kind of close things out, because, this episode's, it's getting there. It's exactly 3 timelines long is how long this episode is. But what are things that we want to see in Breath of the Wild 2? And these could be timeline history bits, or these could be game mechanics, because that is what's coming out next. That's the next slotted game in the series. That's not like an HD remaster or anything. So what are things we want to see in Breath of the Wild 2?
So also, Breath of the Wild 2 is a prequel to Breath of the Wild, correct?
It is. I think so. Yeah, it takes place before it.
It's
those cheeky bastards.
Those cheeky bastards. Yes, it's going to be what happens before, Zelda has to seal herself away in Hyrule Castle with Ganon for 100 years before Link goes into his restorative beauty sleep. Honestly, I would love to see them do away with the weapon system, but I don't think that's going to happen, though.
Probably not.
Although people complained enough, it just might. I feel like this is a franchise that does tend to listen to its fans. But Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I mean, hopefully they don't go the Miyamoto route and just make everything break after one hit, just to really slam us with it. Like that's punishment. You complain about my game, boom, we take all the weapons away. How do you like that?
Now you got no weapons.
Yeah, you ain't got no weapons. I guess one thing I'm hoping, I guess from like a selfish standpoint, is I hope all of my freaking like amiibo things that I have still work in the next game.
Right.
Like, I want to get my Ocarina of Time stuff back. I want to get Epona back, so I have her right away. And I guess like that's the biggest thing. Is like, please give me my amiibo stuff back.
Yeah. I suppose what I look forward to is putting the team together, getting the gang together, right? Like
getting the champions together.
That's definitely what you're going to have to set out to do, probably, I would assume, is, go around, prove your worthiness to all of the chieftains and such of the, surrounding races and clans, and put together a ragtag team of heroes that we know inevitably fail miserably.
Oh yeah, they do not win.
They do not win, and thus fracturing the timeline yet again.
Oh
yeah. Yep.
See, and Joe, I haven't played. Obviously, I've only watched you play several hours of Breath of the Wild. But if I had to avoid something here, and like what I hope they don't do is make this into a Matrix scenario where, like, it's almost like the city of Troy. Like, yep, we destroy like the shit out of Troy every couple of years. We just build on top of it again, and the characters look the same. We just tweak the names a little bit, like.
Yeah.
Honestly,
that's what. Yeah.
I bet they don't lose. I bet they win. I bet they create a whole new timeline where, what if you did win? What if Link doesn't fail and has to go sleep for 100 years? I bet that's what they're doing.
That would be fun.
Yeah. And then they splinter it off all over again.
Oh no, and we get 3 whole new timelines. No! Oh my gosh. Okay, one last thing in closing. I know I said the last thing was the closing one, but this is the last thing.
The true last thing.
The true last thing. What's the worst thing you've ever done to a cuckoo? Or a cuckoo. I believe they're pronouncing this a cuckoo.
Probably the worst thing I've ever done to a cuckoo is keeping it hostage to hack the game and get to areas that I shouldn't be able to get to yet by floating. Enslaving my cuckoo. That's the worst thing I've ever done.
Yep. Guilty of that too. And I think what I've done, I've rewarded it by like throwing it off a cliff.
Right. Nah,
like,
get out of here. I don't need you anymore. Live your life.
Your use for this is done.
I hope you can swim because...
Which, Mark, I know. Have you done any bad things to cuckoos?
I do know that when a cuckoo is killed, that the Cuckoo Revenge Squad will disappear.
Oh.
Yeah.
But no, I've never used them as a whipping post. No, I've always been very nice to them.
Not even once. Not even one time. Not even by accident.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of animals. Did you
do anything bad to that tiny penguin in Mario 64?
Oh,
I dropped the shit out of that.
See?
Yeah. They respawn, okay? Like
I just didn't like its attitude. It had a poor attitude.
Seriously, how many times do we have to keep like slaying Ganon before he finally just gives up? I mean, who knows? But as long as he keeps coming back, we'll keep on playing.
With Hyrule being safe once more, next week we're moving on to the works of Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Together they've brought us cartoon series, movies, video games, and even a Broadway musical.
Before we take off, though, what did you think about having a third host on this podcast? Let us know by leaving a comment about how awesome I am. And if you liked anything else about the show, too, of course. While you're at it, subscribe and leave a review. This critically helps this show to continue. Something about the interwebs really likes it. And no, we're not just covering up for how we love seeing you speak well of us. And until next time, keep on dissecting.